New videos every day. Hey, it's Corrina, your virtual health coach. I'm going to start this video by asking you 4 questions, and I want you to leave your comment below. All you have to keep track of is how many times do you answer yes. The first question is, do you experience sugar cravings more frequently than you would like to? The second question, do you have a recurring problem feeling like no matter how much you eat, you still feel hungry? Or do you often feel like even after you eat, you feel hungry shortly afterward? Number 3, are you trying to lose weight? Are you feeling that it is a struggle to burn off the stubborn belly fat or other areas that you're trying to lose weight? And the 4th question is, do you struggle with low energy levels? So let me know how many answers to these questions were yes for you. In this video, I'm going to reveal how one simple concept can help you improve any of these different issues and give you some simple tips on how to apply it. Every time we eat or drink something, we are going to be increasing the amount of sugar in our bloodstream. This is known as our blood sugar or blood glucose level. This is probably a term that you've heard before, and if you have diabetes in the history of your family, then it's very likely that your doctor has mentioned blood glucose levels to you before. So when we eat or drink different foods, they're going to have a different effect on our blood sugar levels. And I want to give you a very simple visual image to help you understand how these different foods affect our body differently. So here we have a visual representation of this phenomenon, adding sugar to our bloodstream. And here on the x-axis we have time. So we can actually draw a blood sugar spike. Now before I do that, I just want to give you a frame of reference here. So you can consider that this little middle range here, or this line right here, is kind of symbolizing balanced blood sugar, okay? And what you need to understand is that this blood sugar level, blood glucose level, is a life or death situation for the body. And what that means is that if your blood sugar level goes too low, you die. Okay, and if your blood sugar level goes too high, you die, all right? This is a life and death situation, so maintaining the blood sugar metabolism in balance is very, very important for the body. So what we can do is consider what is called a high glycemic food. So the glycemic index is just a fancy schmancy way of basically just quantifying how much of a blood sugar spike you're going to get. So when you eat a really high sugar food, it spikes up your blood sugar. And that's what this would look like, right? We're starting down here somewhere low, we eat something, and we get a very tall spike in our blood sugar. And if you watch my videos, you've heard me talk a lot about a blood sugar spike, and that's what this is. Over a very small period of time, we've increased our blood sugar level up really high. Now, a little later on, I'm actually going to talk about these foods and which of these foods are high glycemic. And then the other example would be something that's lower glycemic. And again, we'll talk about this in a second. And the effect it has on your blood sugar would look a little bit more like this. Okay, so not my best artistry here, but that's okay. You get the idea. But now let's talk about what this has to do with those 4 questions I asked you at the beginning of the video. So thinking a little bit more about what it feels like when these different things are happening. So coincidentally, these high glycemic foods that cause a severe spike in our blood sugar are also largely responsible for weight gain, sugar cravings, artificial hunger, or hunger that we feel when we aren't actually hungry. That's what I mean by artificial hunger. And also mood, energy, and just general how pleasant you feel is also involved here. So when we spike up our blood sugar to this very high level, what happens is the release of insulin from our pancreas, okay? And insulin is just kind of the carrier vehicle that then goes around and transports all this sugar to different parts of the body so that it can be used for energy. Now, the reason that insulin is something that we would associate with weight gain is because when insulin is in your bloodstream, because you've just ingested a lot of sugar, your body is in fat storage mode. Because any of the additional sugar that your body can't immediately use to burn off for energy is going to be stored as fat, and your body can't be burning fat and storing fat at the same time. So if you have insulin in your bloodstream, your body is storing fat. Also, so this blood sugar spike happens, our pancreas scrambles to release a lot of insulin, and then what happens is that insulin kind of maybe overshoots. All right, so it releases so much insulin, it's panicking so much to get your blood sugar back down that now it plunges down very quickly, okay? And when our blood sugar level then plunges down, this is where we have moodiness. This is where we're feeling hungry again because now our blood sugar is low. And again, that's a life or death situation as well. We could actually, our body starts panicking when the blood sugar level gets too low. So this is where we are hangry, as they say, right? We are hungry, we are irritable, we are feeling unpleasant, we're also feeling hungry again. This is also known as the sugar crash. Let me know if the sugar crash is something you've experienced. So conversely, the other side of this would be these lower glycemic foods that we see in blue, okay, that cause a very slow, gradual rise in blood sugar. This means that the food is metabolized more slowly, all right, and the sugar is released into the bloodstream more slowly. So you can see over this same period of time that you have spiked your blood sugar and already plummeted back down to hunger. Here with the low glycemic food, your blood sugar level is still high. You're still feeling full, you're still feeling satisfied, you're not feeling hungry, you're also not feeling grumpy, gripey, low energy, etc. So now let's talk about some simple tips and guidelines to help you apply this and reap the benefits of this very simple information. So I just have a couple of different foods here, and I just want to use these to help give you some kind of basic references and how you can identify high glycemic versus low glycemic foods. So let's start with the Skittles, right? So these Skittles clock in at a 70 on the glycemic index. So to give you a frame of reference, the table sugar is a 65. Okay, so just plain old boring table sugar clocks in at 65 on the glycemic index, and Skittles are actually higher glycemic than table sugar. Now the reason that table sugar is only 65 instead of 100 is because it's half glucose and half fructose. And that fructose takes a little bit longer to metabolize and increase your blood sugar levels. We have a whole video called The Truth About Carbohydrates that explains this in more detail if you'd like a more detailed discussion of this. So table sugar at 65, Skittles at around 70, and then actually even more high glycemic than sugar or Skittles is white bread. Okay, so white bread clocks in at 71, and corn chips clock in at 74. All right, so the hallmarks of a high glycemic food, they don't necessarily have to be sweet. And again, that carbohydrates video explains in detail that refined carbohydrates act in your body just like sugar and are going to have the same effect on your blood sugar levels as pure sugar, and actually even higher because these refined carbohydrates hit your bloodstream even more quickly. Now at the very top is fruit roll-ups. Fruit roll-ups actually clock in at 99, right? Because this is at pure sugar. And corn flakes, as another example, I don't have corn flakes here, but corn flakes are at 83. So again, a great example of how these refined carbohydrates are very, very high glycemic. So this is why I tell people to avoid white bread, among other things. So these high glycemic foods are your really starchy foods. So this includes potatoes. A baked potato is actually at 85 on the glycemic index. White bread, corn chips. Okay, now if you are actually eating corn, that's going to be lower glycemic, and we'll talk about that in a second. But again, these refined and very starchy foods are very high glycemic. And this is your number one enemy when we're talking about diabetes and talking about weight gain. So moving down the other side, Coca-Cola is a 58. So it's just a little bit lower glycemic than the table sugar. And let's see, potato chips, these actually need to go over here. These are a 75. So they're, again, kind of coming up here around with our other starchy foods, our corn chips, bread, and Skittles. So moving down to the other end of the table, we have Hershey Bar, we have a Snickers bar, okay? So the exact numbers on these, the Snickers bar is somewhere around 43, 44. Hershey Bar usually is somewhere between 50 and 60. Now, if you actually go and look up glycemic index values for these things, you'll see that there's some discrepancy depending on what chart you look at, because it depends on what they use to compare things against. If they compare it against white bread, or if they compare it against pure glucose. Okay, so there's some fluctuation that you'll see in the numbers, but the main idea still holds true, which is that milk chocolate is very high glycemic. And the reason why is because of all that sugar. Now, in the previous video, we were comparing different kinds of chocolate, okay, and I talked a lot about dark chocolate. And what you can know is that dark chocolate is lower glycemic. And it's because it contains less sugar and more fat. So fat actually brings the glycemic index down because it increases the time it takes for your body to metabolize that sugar. So this is why the Snickers is lower glycemic than the Hershey Bar. Because of those nuts, because of all that good fat and protein, it pulls the glycemic index down. And again, the same thing holds true for dark chocolate. Again, less sugar, more fat makes it lower glycemic, less hazardous on your blood glucose levels, less likely to give you diabetes would be another way to look at that. But again, these things aren't as high glycemic as the Skittles over here. I can try to keep these in order a little bit, because at least we do have some fat coming from that milk chocolate there, whereas these other things are a lot closer to just pure sugar. So these nuts over here, okay, so peanuts are what I have the exact number for. Peanuts are 15, but I have some different mixed nuts in here. And again, the thing to realize, right, is that these nuts are very low glycemic. They're not going to spike your blood sugar up. So if we kind of return to our little chart down here, right, this is the blue line, the low glycemic foods. This is where the nuts would fall. Okay, and then I also have an avocado here, and this avocado is a perfect example of this blue food. Now they actually don't even chart the avocado on the glycemic index because it is so low carb and so low GI. So I just wanted to show the avocado as an example of something that is very low glycemic, all right? And if we were actually just keeping our diet full of these good healthy fats like nuts and avocados, we can avoid significantly spiking our blood sugar very, very effectively. Now I just want to share a couple of other tips for helping you to apply this information and reap the benefits of understanding just the difference between low and high glycemic foods. So the first guideline is to know that pretty much all highly processed foods are very high glycemic, okay? And so our white bread is a perfect example. Now, if you watched my What the Bleep is in a Big Mac video, I have a very kind of thorough discussion of enriched white flour and what goes into this process. And basically, they strip out a lot of the fiber. They strip out entire parts of the grain where most of the nutrients and minerals and stuff like that reside. And what's left is the really starchy part of the grain. And that's what they use to make white bread. And again, if you look for enriched flour on ingredient labels, you'll start to notice that it's everywhere. And that is a big red flag of something to avoid because it's very high glycemic. Just the process of processing the flour pulls out a lot of the good stuff, and what you end up with, the refined carbohydrates, is very high glycemic. So the second guideline is that sweet or high carbohydrate and high starchy foods are very likely to be high glycemic. Now, this is going to, of course, include our white bread, our corn chips, all the stuff that we have over here, okay? But what I just want to point out is kind of reiterating what we talked about in number 1, which is that the minimally processed natural versions of these starchy foods are in general going to still be lower glycemic. So where corn chips and corn flakes are around 74 and 83 on the glycemic index, corn itself is only a 60. Okay, and it's because of all that fiber and other nutrients and stuff that the corn contains that keeps its glycemic index down. Interestingly, a potato, okay, is higher glycemic than potato chips. And that's because the potato chips are fried in oil. So again, it's that fat bringing the glycemic index down. Now, this is still an incredibly high GI food. I'm not saying it's healthy, but I just want you to understand, the importance of fats, because that's going to bring us into our third guideline. So the third tip is to consume your sweet or starchy foods with a healthy form of fat and or protein, because those fats and proteins help to lower the effect on our blood sugar, help to contribute to a more slow and steady rise in blood sugar rather than this blood sugar spike, which is what's associated with the artificial hunger, sugar cravings, weight gain, and mood problems, right, that we talked about before. So eating some of our chocolate or our candy with some nuts, adding something like coconut oil to brown rice or quinoa or something like that, eating avocado with our starchy foods. This is a really simple way to have a less severe effect on our blood sugar. And of course, healthy fats are really, really crucial to our health, especially the health of our brain and our nervous system anyways. So eating more healthy fats is always a good idea. So our fourth and final guideline or tip is that fiber is your friend, because just like fats and proteins slow down the metabolic rate, okay, so does fiber. And again, the best way to get fiber is from eating the natural foods. There are some different fiber supplements out there and stuff, which can be useful. I can do a whole video on that if you want. But the bottom line is that actually eating natural foods like fruits and vegetables is going to be your very best way to get fiber. Fiber is essential for helping to satisfy hunger. So if you are commonly having this problem, not feeling full, feeling hungry even after you've eaten a whole lot of food, increasing your fiber intake is going to be very, very important. In closing, I just want to touch on a couple more aspects of why this whole concept is so important. So when we're talking about weight gain and wanting to lose weight, One important consideration is that our body adapts and adjusts to our environment. So if you are constantly putting your body through this sugar spiking, sugar dropping, eating more high sugar foods mode, it's actually going to start craving more of those sugars. It's going to expect those blood sugar spikes and actually cause you to be craving those high sugar foods. Also, when we plummet our blood sugar level down very low for after we have this blood sugar spike, this is also going to be a reason that we are craving more high sugar foods, because literally our blood sugar is dangerously low. Remember that this whole blood sugar metabolism thing in the body is a survival mechanism. So your body doesn't know that you are actually dying to fit into your, blue jeans from high school. If you're constantly spiking your blood sugar up and down, your body's just trying to survive. So burning fat and metabolizing fat off your body is a process that kind of takes the back burner. Your body is struggling just to keep your blood sugar levels in check and create enough insulin to do that. So quite literally, your body is becoming more effective at storing fat because of all of the insulin and less effective at burning fat. Okay, and nobody wants their body to be less effective at burning fat. So constantly with these blood sugar spikes and high sugar foods, we are perpetuating this process of storing fat and actually compromising our body's ability to burn fat. The last thing I want to mention is that when we have all of this excess sugar floating around in our bloodstream, it's often stored viscerally. And what that means is around our organs. Largely, this is the fat that gets stored up around our gut. So when we're thinking about stubborn belly fat, this high glycemic foods, high sugary foods, has a lot to do with it, because your body, again, is in this stressed out situation of trying to manage your blood sugar, and it's going to store that fat in a place where it's easy to get to and that is easy for it to be stored there. So that stubborn belly fat is highly correlated with these frequent blood sugar spikes for that reason. And belly fat can be minimized by starting to increase the amount of these low glycemic foods that we're eating and having more of this slow, steady rise in our blood sugar more often. In future videos, I'm going to go more in depth into type 2 diabetes. Now, originally, type 2 diabetes was called adult onset because this was a diabetes condition that you developed later on in life. But then they realized that there were lots of kids who were also becoming diabetic. And at this point, they changed the name from adult onset to just type 2. So in future videos, we're going to talk more about type 2 diabetes, how to manage it, and if it's possible to even reverse it. I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope that you found this information helpful. I look forward to seeing your feedback. Let me know what you thought about this information, if you have any questions, and be sure to let me know those first 4 questions I asked at the beginning. How many of those questions could you answer yes to? I hope you'll subscribe to the Psychetruth channel so you can see all my future videos. You can learn more about me at CorrinaRachel.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.